So we're going to look today, we have the time, so we're going to look at weekly charts today. And we're going to go through the requests that I've been asked, and there's a lot of them, and I'm going to go through a bunch of them today. This was a pretty exciting week as far as the pullback and the rally on Friday. And what was really interesting is that the attention that people seem to be paying was mostly on, Monday, we were off, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Today, it was very interesting how dead people were acting on there. And this was exactly what we were waiting for. So I think that's very telling. And we're going to get into looking at the indexes first to kind of get an understanding of what's going on. And then we're going to get into a lot of process as well. But we're going to focus primarily on the weekly charts because now we have an end of the week and we can see what's going on. So to start with, just consider subscribing to the channel and clicking on your notifications because this information is timely. And let's just get into it. So to start, let's just look here. Okay, this is the weekly on the IWM, and we'll throw in the indicators for a moment. So on the weekly, we could have had a bearish engulfing, but we really don't, right? See how we open at the high and then we stay down, but we don't get past the 5 week. So nothing's really broken here, and you can see how we're still in this channel. Now, for those of us that are in the newsletter and follow the newsletter, I made it very clear yesterday. I hope I made it abundantly clear yesterday of how I was going to trade this. And everyone has to trade differently. But TNA is a 3X ETF that we play in the newsletter, and we've done exceptionally well with it. We got in once in the 40s in November, and then we got back in again recently when it came down to the 21-day, which was right around 77, and we're up about 20, 25 points on that trade now. But the one thing I made clear is we need to hold this line. And I'm in until the weekly close. Follow your process. My process is to wait and see how we close. Now, that kept me in this trade. Now, does that mean I'm still in this trade next week? I don't know. But it did keep me in over the weekend. And I think it's very telling that we have closed over major support again, even though we tested below it. So I would take that into account. Hopefully you're still in this. There's a really large channel here. And I'm going to take a moment on this because we have the time during the weekend. But there's a really large channel here. There's no other way to say it. I mean, 130, 140. This is a 3X index. A 30% move on this is a 10% move on the Russell. There's the depreciation with it because of the time value, time decay. But overall, this looks like it's going to continue. So, continue to stay in it. If you are in that trade from the newsletter. And if you don't subscribe to the newsletter, it's free. There'll be a link in the bio. And there's some really good ideas in there. And it's fairly timely. We try to be very timely. So let's just keep drilling down. So here's the cues. Now, if you were to look at this, right, and let's change this. I like these display backgrounds a little bit different. Pops. I think it looks better. So here's what's interesting. You do, on the weekly, have a bearish engulfing. And we hit the 5-day. So we could see more weakness than we sold down today. But realistically, look at the weeks and look at this chart. I mean, on this weekly, what have we done? And you have this huge channel here. And when you make a channel, you have to clone the lines. And by cloning the lines, that makes the trajectory more. Right? So, because that's really what you want. So you can see here, I mean, this is about as close as you're going to get. But you can see here, you broke the channel down here, pop back into it. But look at this channel since March. This was when COVID hit. But as soon as you pop back in that channel, that was the end of it. Boom. We have really not closed out of that channel, have we? So, you're going to bounce around in here, and there's another tighter channel that you can see in here, and that's the one that we hit. And we've been hitting. And again, we can just clone this over here and drop this right here. And again, you want to clone them so that they have the same trajectory. Now let's get rid of the indicators for a minute. You see what's going on. I mean, it's like a textbook. So, you have a channel and a channel. But what's interesting here is got to the top band and rejected. We talked about this for weeks in the newsletter again. But what happens now? We might come back down. We might test this. Closing lower than the open, but you actually closed right here, didn't we? We closed right on the previous week close, which just happens to be 331.02. What's interesting about that level is that we'll all know this from the daily. Right around here is right where our support is, and 329.76. This is a daily chart on the Qs. And what was the low of the day? 329.97. So we were off by 25 cents on a 300-point index. And we're just consolidating here. When you look at the daily, you can see how much more room is here. And we're just reversing, and now watch, throw these indicators back in. You can see how the 5 and the 8 are an issue, and now we're trapped, right, between the 21-day and the 5 and the 8. So let's see what happens here. I'm optimistic that we're heading higher. We might churn for a little bit before then, but I am fairly optimistic that we're going higher. And finally, let's just look at the SPY just very quickly here. And you can just see this channel again, right? So very similar to what we just saw, kind of a bearish engulfing, not really. And we're just staying in this channel, and there's nothing really to do. And we've already flipped a couple channels. Like we've already flipped this one. Already flipped this one. So, now we're just, what's interesting is look how the trajectory. Do you see what's happening here? The trajectory of this is getting higher and higher. It's not a bad thing. So let's just stay with it. This is the S&P. Let's just stay with it. But we're aware of where these channels are, and we're aware that when we trade at the top of these channels, this is why it's important to look at indexes. I can't stress this enough, guys and girls. You need to look at indexes and see where you are in regards to the channel if you are in a trending channel, because when you get to the top end of these bands, the probability of your trades working is significantly diminished. So just keep that in mind. And that's statistics. You can look it up, but you'll notice it yourself on your positions. So let's get into it. There's a bunch of stocks that we're going to review today. So this is Apple, and obviously everybody knows that this is Apple. But here's the channel on the weekly. I had this in from before, and look how we opened and broke down it, and then 128.87. Now these kind of undercuts are things that we look for sometimes. These little undercuts, we call them boomerang trades, because then they break down where you think you're going to go and then run up. What's interesting about this one is I have a little flagpole here on this last break, this last weekly break. And then I tried to run, consolidate, formed a little wedge, and fell this way with the wedge, but I still have not broken the bottom of that flagpole. So what does that mean to me? It means I'm okay. Now, if I was concerned about it, I would use the low of the day, and then I could go here. And we can easily go to the 21-day on this and regroup. But that's how we're trading right now. So let's sit there and watch it and go from there. If you're not in this already, I would wait and see how this plays out. But there was a nice little bounce in this today. But now the way that it just faded at the end of the day, you just kind of want to see what's going to happen with it and go from there. We prefer to buy it over the 138 level, popping back into that channel. AMRS is one that we've been looking at for a while, and it's one that actually followers have given me. So, I can't see every stock. There's thousands of them, so it's actually helpful to me sometimes. Followers will throw out ideas, and then I can just kind of go through them myself and look at what's best and which ones I really like. So let's just keep going. Now we broke through this 1065 level. We have really good volume here. That's the wrong line. Let's go here. We have really good volume here, and you can see that line, right? So we just grab this for a moment and just come across with it, so you can get a better understanding of how significant this is. So there's only been 2 weeks in the inception of this stock that we're even close to this, and you're turning over. Now you've got to this 1065 at 16 and a quarter, and again we're just looking at the weeklies right now. I still don't have a higher high peak. This will be the first break of a higher high peak. Now, of a real higher high peak, not one of these little guys. So getting above this is huge. Now, the probability of us getting above that is significantly increased with the 200, the 21, the 50, all turning. And when the 50 crosses the 200 on the weekly and the 21, you usually get follow through. It might take some time. You could backfill, come to $10, bounce around, and it could take a couple months. That's why I'm saying you don't just buy on that. You want to see the trigger. So one part of the trigger is going to be getting above that 1834. But above 1834, I would look at it. And if you do fall back to that 1065 level, you may look for a pattern to get in at a cheaper price. So this is Blue Fly, and here's the symbol for this one on the weekly. Now, for those that have been following for a while, we don't review stocks really that have less than 30 data points because statistically they're not really significant. So we're going to drill down probably into a daily on this. But you can see these little breaks, step up, step up. And as I always say, stocks have patterns, and this one is clearly showing you what its pattern is. I mean, it's like freaking glaring right at us, right? And you can see how we respect these little lines. You know, I mean, you can just see that's the low of the day where the 5-day or 5-week is, and we go. But let's get into the daily a little bit just so we have better understanding. So here we are, and we broke this upper channel, right? And this is when I knew it was going to move fast, so I actually mentioned this one on Twitter for those that follow me on Twitter. And I actually mentioned this one because it looked to me like it was going to run. And it did exactly that. It broke out, and then we popped up. We got close to $30, and now you just have this bearish engulfing bar today. I mean, here's the key to this. If you're in this, we did not break below this. And if we didn't break below this, this is still a support. Remember, when you flip these channels, they become support. I still think you have the possibility of being up here 32, so I would hold it. A close below this line on Blue Fly, and I'd blow it out. So this is one that we actually went over before. It's always so interesting when we've gone over these back and then look at them, you know, later when someone asks, and you can just see where the lines were left and then how they act on those lines. So, I mean, this line was drawn, months ago, and at least 2 months ago. No, maybe a month, but now I'm sitting there thinking about it, but still. It's crazy how we talk about how it probably like how it hit here, and now we're up through that. And look at this development. And this is why I always say this. Like, this is why I just said this about AMRS. You see how we get to the line? If you want to buy before it breaks that line, you would have just been sitting with this for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. You're just going, is it ever going to go up? Instead of just coming in when it closed here today and saying, okay, this is now I'm interested. Now the volume could be better on this. But I like this from the standpoint, if you want to play a lower price stock, this is interesting because statistically, when you get back into these on the weeklies, you get above this 50-week, you're going to fill this gap. I mean, that's the first thing. The first thing that starts to build is the right side, and then you go left. But look at this. Like, you should get to this 934 level. So this is interesting. And if you like the lower price ones, take a look. I again would like to have seen more volume. I would have liked to have seen something like this, like a huge spike. But we have not seen that. But I do like that. This is one in the newsletter that we're in, I think, at 1270, and I think we've already reviewed that. Look, I'm not crazy about this and these bars failing. I mean, and then we have to clone this and say everything repetitively so that it sinks in, not because I've forgotten. But look, there's your channel, and we'll just leave the arrows on for time's sake. But let's see what's going on here, right? We just keep hitting this channel and not breaking it. And this is on the weekly. And now we're here, so we realize that we can go back down. I like this idea. And we closed. Look where we closed. Right near last week's all-time high close. I really don't have any damage. I didn't take out the lower low from last week. I didn't even come close to it. I didn't even come close to my 5-week moving average. I think this looks great, and we're in at 1270, I believe, 1275. You can see all our information here, and we're just going to leave that. But, I called this out today, and I think it's why important if you do trade some of these that to turn on the notifications and follow us on Twitter, or follow me on Twitter. I mean, we called this today at 1440. I mean, you can go look at the timestamp. We said, hey, it's got to get through this level. And it didn't, and it rejected, and it came back. So I don't mind holding it because I don't want to try to put this position on again. But what's interesting about this is if you wanted to be out of it and you're watching it, that was a pretty clear indication. And we'll get into that with Tiger later. So this is very interesting to me, and I'm going to get rid of these indications for a minute. So I was pretty, whether this merger goes through on CCIV or doesn't go through, I don't care. I just simply trade price. And I would argue vehemently that the only thing that you should care about is price, and that everything else is just simply noise. Your goal as an investor or trader is to make yourself money. And you do that based upon investing either fundamentally or technically in companies. But you do it with a slant of either one, right? Fundamentals or technicals. If you want to be a fundamental investor, that's great. You just don't know when your timing is. And that's what technical analysis does. And that's why it's so important and why these people look at technical analysis. But my point of this is I don't really care to get into an argument of whether this merger goes through or not. I frankly don't care. All I care about is price action. Now, when this started breaking these channels, I was pretty vocal on Twitter that this thing was going to go. And it went. And now we've gone up. And now they're saying it's going to break. And it might not go through. I have no idea. But what's interesting is we held this 50-30. Now, this bearish engulfing encapsulated these past 2 days, which means there was a ton of selling. There's people that were messaging me telling me that it was because they had to cross a trade. They didn't just, you don't drop a stock 10 points because you have to cross a trade. So people sold today, and to not think that people sold today is disingenuous to yourself. So it's very clear that people sold this and got out today. So just be aware of that. That's all I'm saying. What would concern me? 50-30. If you broke 50-30 here, you're going to go to this line, which is some resistance or some support at 46. And if you break this, you're going to here. You can go back to the 30s fairly easy. So you have a lot of air in here, and so just watch it and just be careful. But so far people have done well with it. So far, it's respecting those lines. Curie is another one. Let's look at the weekly real quick. We put this in the newsletter, but let's go. We'll go take a look at this. But let's go look at this on a daily, because I like the daily more. We have more statistics, more data points. So we got in this at 21. The stop at 20.50. We were risking $1. I thought there could be $10 of upside. Risk versus reward, in my opinion, was 10 to 1. I have a video on that under indicators where I explain how to calculate your process and what you would want your risk reward to be. It's worth 5 minutes of your life. It really puts things into perspective so that when trades happen, you're actually able to understand your process and just act on your process. I'm up 5 to 1. Do I sell 20% or 50%? If you don't know that, you're having those conversations, and then the stock drops. You need to know that stuff cold. So here, on this breakout, I liked it. It traded up a little bit, and as soon as we cleared this level, I wanted to see another 25 cents, and I threw this out there. Now, I say this all the time. See this upper trend, and we can flip this really quick and clone this. And why do we clone them? Because both lines have to have the same trajectory. And isn't that funny how that works? Okay. So, but what's interesting about this is bonk, can't close above it. What's the high of the day? Right on the line. But we do close at an all-time high. So that still is, even though we opened and closed right where we are, and we came down a little bit and we bounced around, you're flat on the day. And I don't have a problem with this. These lines are broken all the time, but you need to understand them. Like we understood it with Telray. And we made a fortune on Telray because we watched this line. And we can talk about that one really quickly just so you understand what I'm saying. So Telray was one that when we got into 22, and then we sold up here, but what was interesting about it is we flipped that channel. And when we started looking at flipping that channel, right, it was predicated upon going to these lines. But once we flipped it, and you can see it right here, hold on, let's just draw this real quick, right? So once we flipped this channel, right, and this is where we're bouncing against it, and I forget where we were in 22.5, and I kept saying, let it do its thing. We broke it on this breakout. Let it do its thing. And we never closed below it. And if you take a look at that, you can see we've never closed below that. What does that do? When you flip channels, these things can go parabolic. By parabolic, I mean they can do this and explode up. And that's what this has the opportunity to do, right? That's why it's so important to me. This is Carrie. That's why it's so important to me that I risk this to be in this, because if I do flip this, then it'll keep going. Now, if I bounce here and then I make a lower high one day, I might just, depending upon your risk profile, you might just blow it out and go, you know what? I'll get back into it when it gets through here and gets moving. So that's really it here. I mean, at this price point, I don't think you do anything with it. Just sit with it. Now, I want to just touch base on this for a second. I try to avoid crypto, and I get asked a lot about it. And crypto trades like any other commodity, right? It trades solely on technical analysis and supply and demand. That's it. And anything else, it's just disingenuous. I mean, that's really what it trades on. And you can see, like up here, you can draw this one as well. We're going to get into this a little bit here. I'm going to put that there for a moment. But what I want to explain is I like crypto and I like Bitcoin, and I have investments in them. I just don't talk about them because it's more of a craze, like you have to get in. And it's not. You could have bought lumber. If you go look at lumber prices, right? You could have bought lumber a year ago and it's up 4x. So you need to understand why these are moving. They're moving based upon monetary supply and asset inflation, because inflation is, people are looking for an inflationary hedge. Paul Tudor Jones gave an excellent speech on this that you could find out. If you listen to it, he was telling people to buy, Bitcoin at like 10,000. And he's one of the greatest investors in the world, one that we've ever seen. So, his work ethic is just insane. So here's ETHE, which is ethereum. Now, this is the only thing that I would say that I think you need to take a look at. This has different characteristics than Bitcoin. I'm not going to get into it all. There's been a comparison made to me that this is to Bitcoin as Bitcoin is MySpace and this is Facebook. That this is going to be way more decentralized. And again, this is not my space. That this is going to be one to really watch. Now, that said, I do like this chart, and I like this chart a lot, and we're going to drill into it here. I'm apprehensive, but I may eventually, if this triggers, put it in the newsletter, because I think the potential for this is staggering. So let's just walk through it here. I have an enormous base of 2 years. And I have never had a higher high on that base. I had one here, and then it failed. But I've never had one that held, right? And during that time, all I've done is base. That's all I've done here is base. So what does that mean to me? That means that at the end of the day, a huge base, the bigger the base, the bigger the breakout. So say it. So what I'm saying is, if we get above this level, which just happens to be here, which is like 25, and we get above here, do not be surprised if you see this in the newsletter. I think that this has immeasurable moves. I mean, I think that this could 3-4x and go here. There's literally nothing to stop it. And I also think that you need to think about it this way. If you think that institutions are only going to buy if they are allowed to buy and the government doesn't step in, and it does not seem like they're going to at this point, if you think that they're only going to buy one kind of cryptocurrency, you're wrong. They're going to hedge their risk just like everything else. So they will spread this out, and they'll spread into the ones that are the most liquid. And this is one of those. So I would definitely, keep this on your radar, but really watch this 25 level. Because when we get through that, if we get through this with solid volume, and you can see the volume accelerating, I mean, it's greater than anything we've ever had before. So if you see this break through this, your first stop is this 28, 29 level, and then there's nothing but blue skies up here. So that it's definitely one to put on your radar. So fuel cell, this is the weekly, and I know people love these names, and I do too, but they've had huge runs. They've had enormous runs. So look how far back this goes. I mean, so what we could see here pretty clearly is, let's go to this peak. I mean, look, in 2017, right, we were at 29.88. And without even knowing where this is, where is this? 29.44. Okay, so we're 40 cents off a 3-year number. So let's drill down into this. Okay, we have a rising wedge. Okay, I'll say this again for people. Rising wedges are bearish. Okay, they're not bullish. Okay, I like the channels, but these channels break. So you have to be aware of them, just like on the indexes, right? I'd rather have consolidation and then a breakout with a flag than just have a rising channel. They're just safer. Now, we're out of this channel right here, and we duplicated the line, so we have the same trajectory. But we go right to that 8-week. Now what? This has got to show me. It's got to hop back into this channel before it goes. And look how the volume's starting to drop off, right? All of a sudden, the weekly volume on fuel cell is dropping. And I'm just going to drill into the daily so you can see what I'm talking about here. I mean, this is becoming a waterfall. You tried to rally, you couldn't get above that 20.94 level. You have the 8 crossing the 21. You're going to $15. I mean, why wouldn't we go to $15? We wouldn't go to $15 if we consolidate here and go higher. But I don't know any chart that just reverses course here that looks like this. So based upon this roll, I think we're heading to at least this level. You're heading at least to 1645. It says 38, but I think it's 45. Yeah, it's 38. Okay. So, and then if you break that, you're going to that 15 level. So this is not something I would buy. If I owned it and I was, if I broke below the low of today, which was a failed reversal, and it's a failed reversal because we couldn't close above a support and resistance line, I'd be gone. I'd get out of the way, because when these come in, they're going to come in fast. And I understand this time it's different. Okay, November, this thing was $2. If you think these stocks can't do that, you have not been investing for a long period of time, because they can get hit again. Just like Telluride, that's why we had stops. We made money all the way up, but sometimes they come all the way back down, and that's exactly what happened there. So FEYE, this is very interesting because I kind of like the gray. So we're going to go back to the gray. I just think it looks cooler and clearer. So, but this is very interesting. So I haven't looked at this stock in probably 2 weeks. I was interested in it up here or here, I believe, when it broke out. I was looking for a trade. Pardon me. I think we did a trade in the... I actually think we did the trade newsletter, and I think we got stopped out of it for a loss. Now, let's get rid of these moving averages for a moment and the volume, and let's just look at price, okay? And looking at price sometimes tells a completely different story, and you get rid of a little bit of the noise. So this has been our downtrend. This line has been there probably since January. So for the past month, we have not gotten above it. This is why I say you want to trigger so you don't have dead money. So what does that mean? What do we do now? Let's get rid of this arrow. It's annoying me. So let's just look at this break. Okay, we were between these two levels, right? And you can see this weekly, and we broke it. Now this has flipped, hasn't it? Now this is resistance. See how we can't close above it? We can't close above it. We did it once. So there's no reason to go near this. I don't know why it's acting the way that it is. It's in a hot space. You think that it would run. It is respecting this 2029 level. So the indicator's back in, and that's right where the 50-day is. Now, what does this mean? Well, look, it could mean that you get rid of all this crap, right? Let's just remove all the horizontal lines. It'll be easier. Redraw them. So, okay. So if you have support here and the 50-day here, and all these lines are this close, well, if I get a bump out of this wedge to, like, let's say, here, something significant where it's like a higher high of one of these, you could play this. You could play FEYE, and it may go this time. Laser was like this, and then it finally went. We got stopped out, and then it finally went. So, but if you look at this on the weekly, you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Now, this on the weekly, they won't let me clone array. I don't really understand why, but this on the weekly, that's about the same trajectory. So, looks great. Here's your flagpole. We're at the high top of the flagpole. And all we're doing is trading. And we got a little falling wedge in it. Weekly, this looks great. Look, and look at this level of support back here. And isn't that interesting? It's right near where we are on the daily. Right? It's right where we are near in the daily. So you have a couple support levels on this. So if this flips to that 2187, I just call it 22 just to make the math simple, I'd take a look at that. FR, SR, let's get rid of these indicators for a second and just look at this. I mean, you should be able to see exactly where support is. Exactly, right? And what do? We flip this. These are old, again, these are old levels that we drew weeks ago and have just left there. So the support and resistance lines are, when you know how to draw them and know how to draw them right, they are really powerful. And you can see, and they exist solely because of human nature and buying and selling. I mean, it's not rocket science. So see this? Like, we're just coming down. We can't even have like an up day. Every day is just met with selling and selling. But we're not breaking any support. We broke through this, which kind of sucks. And we see these patterns, and this is kind of what the pattern is. So I would hold off until this confirms and gives us more. Pardon me. But overall, nothing's broken here. You just need to possibly curl back up. And today was the first day that we don't have a lower low. And you're right under here, so if we curl back up, this could get ready to go. But I would look at that 1850 level, and that's a daily. So this is the weekly chart we're going to review, and I was asked about this one earlier today. This is really very interesting because it has just been straight up. But if you draw this line correctly, okay, and I was looking at this earlier, but I didn't do it in today's video or in Friday's video because I didn't have the time. I try to make those shorter. But look how we flip this channel, and we talk about this all the time. Now what? And if you know how to draw these right, look, there's the low. So someone actually knowing this and having this line this week could have picked this off right around here with another little pattern. And look how we're respecting this. This can go. This is setting up for a bigger move. And here we are on the daily with that. Now look. So we're setting up here. So keep this one on your radar. But if we break up over this, we could just really explode up on this stock. GMBL, let's go to the weekly on this for a minute and just see. Yeah, we have enough data. So, I mean, this has been out for a while. You can see the volume has just absolutely increased and just done exceptional. But look at how you broke this 1461, tried to rally for it, couldn't do it, boom, boom, boom. Closed above it a week ago, and now that close becomes the open, doesn't it? And it pushes. Now we closed at an all-time high. In my opinion, this is setting up I'm sure that DraftKings is in this and GAN and everything else. I mean, I'd have to drill into it to see, what's really there. But this is really interesting because it's setting up, and it's setting up a nice flag to go higher. So I would look for a break. If I was into this, I would look for a break above this until we have a more definitive weekly pattern on this. And let's just do GMBL here. So you guys know, you remember, and girls. So I would look for that kind of break. GOEV. Okay. The weekly chart. I mean, there's a lot of noise here. Right? I mean, see the rejection. I like this because of the pattern, but that's why I'm not going to do I don't really need to do the daily. I think we did the daily earlier Friday anyway. So, but let's look at what's going on here, right? We have this huge, enormous wedge. And the one thing I always talk about is when you start seeing these huge weekly bars, it usually means a change in trend. And that's exactly what happened, right? We exacerbated out here and we exhaustion gapped, and that was the end of it. We started here and then we went to here, and then it's over. And then we come back, we correct, right? We talk about this all the time. And then you undercut support, and then you correct, and then you swing back up. But look how it's getting tighter and tighter. This needs weeks of work for this weekly to break out. But if you get that based upon this wedge, your first count is really to this 22 level. So I would keep this on your radar. But watch this line, and you want to get above that line. And it looks to me like it's going to take 3 to 4 weeks, and that would put you right around 17 and a quarter, 17 and a half level. So this one was very interesting today to me. This is a SPAC done by Goldman Sachs. And this spike today, if you go and take a look at the drawing down, this spike today, I'm going to go off on one of my tangents, it looks like. With this kind of volume coming in, pretty substantial volume for this coming in right around the time that CCIV had volume that crashed it, or made it come in, I should say. So I just found that interesting. Like it was so timely how that happened. Now here we are trading up, and I don't know what they're going to put it in. I don't know if there's any correlation between this and CCIV. I have no idea. It was just very interesting to have two swaps like that fast, and this trade, a 2 million share block, and that traded 800,000 share block, and you saw the differentiation and reaction. So what's interesting is just this break, right, and then this volume. So, and this is a daily, but look at this. I am at 13 million on a 3 million. I'm 4x volume today. So something's going on. So I would definitely put this on your radar and take a look at it. But look here, I mean, you're flipping this channel. You've already flipped this one. Right? I mean, you already flipped that one. So something's going on here, and I put this on your radar. IPOE, we've been in and out of this one a couple times, and I like it. You're forming this is from before when we were looking at it. This used to be a resistance. This was a minor support and a major support. Interesting when you leave these here and how they act. Let's get rid of this one for a moment. Let's just look at this, right? So you should be able to see this wedge pattern pretty clearly. I shouldn't even need to draw it. I would look for a break above this 24.62 level to the 25 level, and a break like that, could see 28, 26. Now, I would wait for this break just because of what I talked about earlier. You just don't want dead money. But this is also very interesting. Look at this. See when these moving averages start to go straight? When they start to go straight like that, That's concerning to anyone that wants to change or follow a trend and trade a trend, because that just means that we're going to be stagnant when they all start going, when they start flatlining. So just be aware of that when you start to see that. And we're going to Lyft, there was a Supreme Court case that hit tonight where it looks like they're going to have to, Uber at least is going to have to qualify these people as employees, from what I understood. I don't know what happens to these stocks on Monday, if it's a non-event or not. But I thought that was very interesting. If they have to categorize people like that and offer pay and holiday pay, that's going to really, really crush this model. This is the weekly on Lyft, and I really like this chart. Like, it's just firing on all cylinders right now. So I don't know who brought this one to my attention, but you got a great stock here. I mean, here's your higher high. Right? Boom. We've broken the downward trend. We've broken this downward trend. Look at the trajectory of these two downward trends. They just happen to be the same. Guarantee if I flip this over and put it here, it's probably the same. So, but let's see what's going on here, right? We broke out after this consolidation. There's our little boomerang undercut, and boom, here we go. Now, from this level, what happens? I actually think this is buyable here. But you need to see what happens with that news on Monday with the stock. And if it comes down on that, it might mean institutional selling, and you don't want to be involved if that's the case. So I usually don't discuss the news, but that hit, and that's extremely timely. But we have a clean shot to 68.33. Like there's 10 points here. There's 4 points of downside. It's a 2-to-1 trade, but I really like that. I really think that level can go. So I don't think it's anything for us to get up to the 68 level. And you can even see this one right here. Since you broke that and above this, boom, we've just been rocking and rolling. So I really do like Lyft, and I would continue to put this on your radar. So Momo. Okay. I'm just in this major downtrend, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one. Here's why. Let's try this again. There we go. I mean, you have a major downtrend here that you're not even close to getting near. And I'm down here, and I'm trying my butt off here, right? You can see this little level right here. But I mean, I have this at 22 that's going to be an issue. We have this little support line here that we seem to be holding. I drew it here, and it just happens to hit here, here, and stop here, right? So, but I would be really, really cautious here, and I would need this to develop a little bit more before I would be interested. It's not something I would jump into. So, it's very interesting, this MSTR, and we're talking about the Bitcoin, and I actually did a video where I went through, and I might link at the end of this, where I went through like the top trends for the year, and there's no doubt that crypto is definitely going to be there. But what's interesting is what they're doing with their money by just buying crypto and getting people to buy it because of that. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how that ends. I don't think it ends well, frankly, because you're just going to become a holding company. So I'm very interested to see how that happens. So this was a chart or a trade we set up earlier. Someone was asking me about it. I didn't put it fully in the newsletter. I think we talked about it. But, when something moves like this, I just get concerned. And if I can't be in front of somebody all the time, I just get concerned. People have day jobs. And, you buy this thing and then you come in like this. You buy it up here and then you come in and now you're down, 50% or 40%. But this was a fairly simple trade when we broke here and the way that this was the low and how it acted. But we broke this wedge today, and I really wanted to go over this. We broke this wedge today and we closed above the 950 level. Now, the one divergence that's going on with these that I would tell everyone to be concerned about, okay, this week we have Bitcoin hitting all-time highs. These stocks are not hitting Riot, Mara, and people that follow me on Twitter know that I have a small short position in Riot right now. But look at these. They're not hitting new highs. I know as soon as I say this, everyone tells me I don't understand. It's charts, it's patterns. There's nothing more to understand except the pattern. So I'm apprehensive with these because they seem to be running out of steam where Bitcoin is not. Or Bitcoin is becoming more accessible, and then people are like, why don't I just drink from the fountain instead of playing these? And I think you might be seeing more of that as more of these trading platforms for crypto open. So this is really this is very interesting. But breaking above this 950, you could easily get back to this 1200 level and this 1315 level if it does continue. I mean, if you do get a higher high here and confirm higher, like just one more bar, that would make it that would give me a lot more confidence. But it's just interesting that they're just not going higher anymore. Why the stock is going higher? It's almost like they ran out of steam. MVIS, we went through the daily already. Look, on the weekly, it's fairly simple. This was your breakout, this 9 3/4. Here, you just need to start watching these levels. This little bar right here, and the way we closed on the weekly, it would concern me a little bit. And the reason I say that is because when you're this close together and you're this high up, even though we closed at an all-time high and that needs to be recognized, this was the high end of the bar. This is the low end of the bar. I'm in the lower end channel of the bar, and I'm basically forming a doji, which can mean reversal of trend. So what will probably happen here is that people that are in this are going to be pinned for a little bit, right? And then it will resolve. It will either resolve by breaking or resolve by continuing. But I don't have an answer right now because of this bar. So we just have to wait and see. There's no clear signal there. NIO, that's interesting. I got this here twice. So this line's been there on the weekly, but you can see this, and just let's remove this for a minute because I really want to duplicate this so people can see this. So there's that, and then what we do is we clone these, as I state, and we come over here, and look how that just fits perfectly, right? So what's intriguing here is I actually have a high tight flag. I actually have a flagpole right here. This is at the top of it, and it's consolidating in a falling wedge pattern. This is really interesting, right? So like this, we're stopped out in the newsletter. We got in at 48 and change. We sold some in the 60s, and then I think our stop was 57 or 58. So we made like 25, 30% on it, but it wasn't really what I was looking for. I was looking for a real big power move, and it just didn't happen. So what we need to do now is just let it set up and break. A break above this channel gets us back into this channel. And that's the channel that I was shooting for when we got in at 48. That's the channel I want to be in. When we got in at $48, this is what I was hoping we'd start banging against this one, and we didn't. So now we just have to watch and wait. But that is still setting up. So NKTR, we just added to the newsletter, and let's just look at the weekly here, right? 2506, and we closed below that. That's not the best, especially when I have this much the whole way, right? I would like to have seen a stronger close. That's NKTR, but we just didn't get it. And there's our close, but we have an inside day, and these days are getting smaller and smaller, which means we're going to resolve ourselves very shortly. These inside days usually are just like battles, and that battle's getting tighter and tighter, and we're going to form a wedge. Now, statistically, this wedge should be broken to the upside because this breakout bar and the way the moving averages are going gives the probability to an upside breakout. But we don't know that until it happens. So if you have your position on, just leave it on. Go from there. We're down, 8 cents? So just leave it. NNDM. Let's just look at this on the weekly. This stock has just been an absolute monster. But now we're running into that 200-week moving average. So now we're really going to have to see how this plays out. I don't think there's anything to do here except watch and wait. I need to get above this. I need to get above this 200-week moving average. Right now that puts me at 17. Every chance it had, if we drill into this on NNDM, it's failed. So, it's failed, and what does it do when it's failed? It goes back and it tests support, and that's exactly what it did. So there's nothing to do here. I do like the name. The way that they can issue stock and still go higher is just staggering. So there's obviously major interest. We just have to do it the right way. OBSV. I try to stay away from these little guys, but I understand that people like playing them, and I understand why. But let's just take a look at this. So this is the weekly. Right? I mean, you couldn't have gotten, if you play these little guys, you couldn't have gotten a better signal. I'm breaking a multi-year downward trend here 5 weeks ago, and I have the single highest volume I've ever had on it. Right? It doesn't get any better now. At this level, we're going to here, 6. But we had this little wedge. We tried to break it that week. We didn't break it. Now we're respecting these averages, aren't we? All of a sudden, we're respecting the 8-week. We're respecting the 5-week. And now we're closing above it where we weren't before. This can push. This can go higher. And there's a couple let's just look at this. Let's just look where you closed. I mean, you just happen to close at this 5-year support line, which is resistance now. And that just happened to happen here as well. So what does that tell you as far as a pivot? I need a weekly close above $5, like a real solid one with real volume. And that would convince me that we're going to the 6 level. And through that 6 level, then where you would go is to the 789 level, right? You'd head up to that way. And so I just have to see and watch this, but that's what should happen. And Planter, this is the weekly, and we're going to leave this in for a minute, even though it's just to show something, just to show the weekly. Even though we don't have 30 weeks, I just want you to look at this. I mean, this is so glaring to me. And if you keep looking at these, just remember, like, if you get frustrated with how fast I'm doing these, and how fast I can draw the lines, right? Just remember that I've been doing this for over 20 years. So if you do anything for 20 years, you're going to become great at it. But it does come with time and just starting to recognize pattern recognition. So I'm in this rising wedge. What do I always say? Rising wedges are bearish. People don't want to hear it, but it is. This is pretty staggering volume that happened on the lockup. But I have a hammer bar here, right on the outside. I have a huge hammer. I've come down, and then everybody was waiting for this today. Everybody was waiting to get into this stock. And you can see what we did here. We broke the support level, tested this other one, right? Everyone found out that Kathy was buying it for ARK, and boom, off we go. And we stopped right at the 50-day, which is not surprising. So if you have a huge lockup and it's owned by institutions and very high net worth individuals, which this one is, this stock's owned by guys that are billionaires. They're going to do this all day long. They're going to sell at this 50-day. This is the point that I want to get across. I walk through this trade all day today with levels, key levels all day. And that's why I stress, like, hey, maybe listen to the notifications. But I drew these levels out all day on where we were going. And we went right to this 29.76 level, did a bearish engulfing on it, and that was it. That was your signal. It's time to go. And this is where a huge execution happened right above the 5-day. And I guarantee you, when someone looks at VWAP, they did their job on the day by getting their guy out at that level, or girl. But when would you know that this selling has dried up? Okay, the one way that you're going to be able to tell when this selling is dried up on Planter is when it is over the 50-day moving average on the daily. And I'll say it again. When this is over the 50-day moving average close on the daily, okay, your selling is probably dried up. Because institutions look at this level and they can justify, their alpha based upon it. So they want to be above this level if they can be. So that's really important to understand and to take a look at, because I can't stress that enough, that you just watch that level and we'll go from there. But I do think this heads higher. The gap up was disappointing because I was hoping to get a little wedge and go, but put it in the newsletter, but that's not going to happen now. So QS is one that a lot of people ask me about, and it is, I don't know if the music's too loud or not, but QS is one that people ask me about. But let's take a look here, right? So we don't have the 30, but this is pretty glaring. So look, there's 40 bucks, and boom, boom, boom. So 40 is a pretty solid number, right? And then you have a couple little wedges here. You can see when we broke this one, I think this is the one I showed a couple weeks ago. And we just jumped right on the outside of that. If you drill down into it, you can see it. You jumped right on the outside of that, and that was it. It was over, boom. And then we just took off. So there was your easy money. Okay, and then you see how this bar opens and closes, opens and closes, opens at the low, closes at the high. That's most bullish. You can't get a more bullish bar than that. So that's the most bullish bar that you can basically have. If you didn't have these little tiny wicks, that would be most bullish. And look at our volume starting to pick up and accelerate. This is interesting. I would like to have closed at the higher end of the week, but considering the week that we had probably had people taking profits from yesterday, frustrated when it ran up and pulled back. So we have to clean them out a little bit. But look where we're sitting again, right at that 50-day. So let's just close above the 50-day. I don't like how we closed above the 50-day here and we're below it. So if I was long this, if I closed below 61, I would be gone. If I wanted to be more aggressive and less conservative with my money, 54, 64, where this gap below and these highs would be my stop. I wouldn't add to this until it sets up and closes above this 50-day and a higher high above this level. And I'm getting pretty technical now. But I'd want to be above 67 now, 67 and a quarter, and above that 50-day, obviously. So, Sava, it's just, I don't think it makes sense to look at the weekly. So, and I think I addressed this one earlier. I may not have. On Friday, but let's just do it again. So let's get rid of these indicators for a minute because I just want to see this clearly. So you can see this wedge and you can see where it lands. I mean, you can see exactly where we landed. And you have an inverse hammer and we didn't fall back into the wedge. What did we do? We just held the line. We just held that line. Then what happened? We got buying in today that jumped that line. I know I'm getting really technical with this, but this stuff's really important. See how you all of a sudden jump this, right? You gap over all the closes, which means it's almost like a perfect gap when you do that, because if you were short or you wanted to get in, now it's higher than all the closes. So you have that whole mentality. What was I thinking? I should have bought it. I didn't, blah, blah, blah. And now look, now we have one of the highest closes we've had. And it just happens to coincide with this, doesn't it? So what would we want to have happen here to get us back into this? And I know news is coming, and you can see how we broke that wedge. And here's your next one. And look, we're kind of above that, aren't we? So all I would really need is a higher high, which would be 57, 67. And this thing can reignite itself and get back into these levels, these 90s, the 110s. I would watch this flip pretty carefully. And let's put the indicators back on. I don't like how the volume's not there. And I do know this one that we are waiting for some phase 3 data to come out. And you can see, like, look, here's your gap, boom, boom. So we're waiting for that data to come out, which they're saying is any day. So that could be why the volume's drying up. Sometimes these people won't even touch them or go near them, the institutions, until that's out. They just want to wait. Like, why take the risk? I'll pay up. That's pretty much what happened. Like, think about that. That's what happened with, NVAX. Thinking about NVAX and typing it. So that's really what happened there. But so here we are in this weekly on SE, and we talk about this all the time. What has this done? It's flipped the channel, and that's a pretty crappy channel that I just drew there. So let's remove this. So we jump the channel. I would keep my eye on this. Certain stocks like this are going to be leaders, and this can go parabolic. So just watch this line and then just see how we act. A higher high would convince me. A higher high on this, which would be 285, could lead to a really solid move higher. And then this becomes your support level. So SEED, let's just look at this on a weekly basis. This is in the newsletter, and I think we're in, look at these prices, $24.50, and I gave a whole dissertation on this the other day on how to trade it, and hopefully people listened. So here's your break. Here we are, and this is exactly what you want to see. That kind of volume on this kind of break. And that's really what we saw. Now, we have this 28 level, but we have these higher high peaks, and this is SEED. So we're really rocking and rolling here, and I think that this can continue to move. So let's see how it plays out. We have our buys and our sells on it, but I do like this, and I love this huge cup. This is awesome. I mean, I went down to 250, right, back in the day, and now I'm back up here. I mean, like, this is enormous, and we haven't broken out. And this has been around a while. I mean, let's look at a monthly real quick. I know the month's not over, but this has been around for a while. There's a big, big trade here. I mean, this thing can go to 40 and still be in its downtrend. And that's right. Look where that 200-month moving average is starting to show. But look at the volume that's kicking in. This is the 3 largest months in volume it's ever had. So something's going on here, and this is something that I wanted to be involved in for the people that are in the newsletter, and I really think that this can go. If we break this, you look at the cup, base, and depth, and it gives you an idea. This could be a $40, $50 stock, fairly easy. Snap on the weekly, I mean, we broke out. Earnings, hit a high, rejected, open, closed in an all-time high. My volume is awful. It's the only thing I would say about it. Usually these breakouts, if you look at them, lead to more consolidation. So most likely this leads to consolidation, right? If you look at this one, I mean, that's what it does. So let's see how it plays out. I wouldn't chase this. I mean, every time you chase this one, it slams you. And here's the channel, and you can see what happened here, right? Like if we get up here, we may reject again. We rejected here, we rejected here. This one, we couldn't even get close to it. So Tiger, and I talked about this, but let's get into the weekly on it so we can understand this a little bit better. So I know that all this stuff's going to be in the wrong spot, but just remember that this is Tiger. So here we are, week after week after week. I mean, I know that this is where we closed the week before when we were in it, and everyone's disappointed that we're not up here, but you just have to look at the perspective on exactly what's happening here, right, on a weekly basis. This looks great on a weekly basis, and it could consolidate, and it would be healthy, but every week for the past 3 weeks, we've closed at an all-time high. Now, today, I was just calling out levels over and over again, and this is why, if you're interested, I do it on Twitter. We were just calling out levels all day long on where this was going to break, right? Where those levels were and where you needed to get out. If you wanted to trim, called this is a level you need to consider to get out. And then what does it do? Went up to here, and then as soon as we rolled here, and I'll show you exactly what I called, so that you can look at it for yourself and see if you can identify these patterns. So rising wedges are what? They are bearish. And as soon as we broke it, what happened? Boom, we came down. As soon as we closed here, if you just go look at the timestamp, you'll see it on Twitter. And that's why I said, this is a great place to trim. And then we just traded down for the rest of the day. It looks like we're up after hours. And for the longer term positions, I don't want to try to put my whole position back on over this little trade. But you know what? It depends on your position size too. But here, if you're looking at this and go, man, I just ran this whole thing all week, all the way up, and I was just down here. Well, this is your chance, right? This is your chance. Get out. Everybody trades differently. But, we're in this very, very cheap. Very cheap. So this is definitely something, we're at 1750. So this is something that when you're up here, you're up 100-something%. Trim. We trimmed here. Trim again. Every time it gets close to this line, trim. Just wait for the next pattern and add to it. Depends on your your process. And I said this earlier. I have people that I know that I'm very friendly with, been trading for years. If that's their buy price, they haven't sold the share. They're just leaving it alone. They'll figure it out later, but they're not even concerned about selling right now. They're just sitting with it. So everybody trades differently, and you need to develop your own style. Tesla, let's look at the weekly. JD Power came out, and I try not to get, again, into the fundamentals, but they got slaughtered in JD Power as the most unreliable car. So that's not the best news that you want for your car company. Look, I'm not crazy that this 5 and this 8 week are rolling and that this is the high, and that here's your flag and you've closed below the flag for the first time and closed below the 8 week. You could roll here. I actually thought on the daily that we were setting up to go higher, but it looks like you might come in first. You might come to this 700 level, or you could even come all the way down here to 625. You just need to watch this if you're long this. I definitely would not add now. And we're holding these levels, but if we break this 50-day, all bets are off. If you break the 50-day, you're going to 710 is the best way to look at it. So a close below the 50-day and realize 710's in play. TTCF. So I was asked about this one by a gentleman, and he's like, hey, it's just sitting there. Yes, it is just sitting there. There is no reason to be in this right now unless you're in super cheap, which I think the guy is. Then you just have to sit back and just watch and wait. Sometimes the best thing that you can do is nothing. So if I'm in this cheap, nothing's really resolved here. So I would have my process in place as to what would have to happen for me to sell. Is it the minor support? Is it major support? So, where would my sell be on this? If, let's say I was in here, right, and I'm in at $11, my sell would be a close below the 50-day. I'd be willing to risk it because I know that I'm not going to get, $10 stock again, most likely. But, right now you have this overhead wedge. You have this other level of support. You can see these support levels. Well, you should, in time, you'll be able to see them. But, you can see these levels that it just keeps rejecting, right? So I would be concerned, but my sell would be here. Now the 5 and the 8 crossing, I did that video on it. It's like 5 minutes. You can watch it if you want, but you know what happens here, right? It gives us weakness. We're going to have weakness. And does this pattern respect the 5 and the 8 cross? Let's go through history. Crossed here. No, not really. Crossed here, went up. Crossed here, respected it. Crossed here, respected it. Crossed here, what do we think is going to happen? Probably going to respect it. It's probably going to come back down. So you need to be willing to ride this at least to the 2140, 20 level. If not, just figure out what your max stop is. Mine would be this 50-day, and I'd be willing to hold it until then. So on this weekly on Twitter, okay, let's look what's going on here. Right, look at this. Just trapped between these two levels. Let's go to a monthly. Maybe that'll blow it up, make it even easier. Yeah. So, look at this level. Boom. And we've rejected it so far. Nice move, but that level's holding, right? So if you look at it, you look at the weekly, you're actually trapped between that and this other small spot. It seems to take forever to roll that back. Let's collapse these. Let's get rid of them for a moment. Just look at the price. So you're trapped between this 70.43 and 74.73. And you can see how that's acting. There's nothing to do there. If it breaks that, you'd want to get out. If it breaks that 70.73 level, let me go over that one again. I'm not being clear. So if it breaks the 70 level and I was in it, I would just get out because I made so much money on it. I would not buy it until it breaks this level, until it clears $75, and probably I'd want to see a weekly close. URG, I have no idea what this company does. Looks like some kind of energy company. Let's look at a weekly on it, right? So let's just drill into this. Looks like this has been around a while. It's probably some kind of nuclear energy if I'm being asked about it now, but I really don't know, so I'm just speculating. Look, it's a dollar stock, and these are the easiest things in the world to manipulate. You have this buying coming in because all of a sudden, maybe it is energy, maybe it's on the power grid and what happened on Texas. All I would do is I would tell you to be careful with these because they can do exactly what they did here and just crush you. Now, with that said, if you are hell-bent on buying this, 108.55, a close below there, or a break of that, and I would be gone. I would not be a buyer of this based upon this bar and how we're closed on the weekly until I'm above it, and that's 155. That's how I would play it. You know, Watt, I know it's getting a lot of attention. You know, people need to remember in 2017, and I know companies reinvent themselves. This company was like an absolute disaster, and they were doing these wearable devices and trying to link it to crypto. So, you know, this is one that Citron actually got right and just nailed and owned the guy. I mean, their research 3 years ago was so much better than it is now, in my opinion. But that's a little rant. But I can't say enough. I mean, it was just excellent, the report. But let's look at what's going on here. We're rallying up, but volume's increasing. I'm not above this, so at this point, it does not make sense to get involved until a couple things happen. I need to get to this level. The only way I'm getting to this level is to close above there. The only way I'm going to close above there is if I get volume, and my volume's going down. So right now, I need to see whatever the impetus is that gets this over this line, which is going to look like 8.25. Until then, don't go near it. WWR. Let's go to the daily on this. It looks like we've done this one before. So, you know, I kind of like what's going on here. You know, this reversal, this undercut, this is very interesting. So you see this reversal, you have the undercut, and now we are at the 21-day, the 8 and the 5, and we could go to this top level, which gives us $11 from $7, and our stop is 760, or a undercut below this line, which was really 730, I should say. So what does that give us as a stop, right? It gives us roughly a 75-cent stop to make $3. Right, 350. So you know that's not awful. I mean, it's almost 5 to 1. So if I was to play this, I'd look for a volume spike, and then get me above this moving average and the higher high, and I would give this a shot. This could develop, and you can start seeing how it's curling and how it's respecting this. Right, you get this little one here. You have this bigger one right here. You can see that, right? But if you undercut this, get out of the way. But if you break above this, I would give this a shot. I think it could get to $11. So that's it. As always, if you find this helpful, please click the like button. I'm trying to educate as many people as possible on what it takes to be a consistent and profitable trader. That's it, and I hope you enjoy your Saturday.